I'd like to call this meeting of the Carson City School District School Board to order. It is 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, February 14th, 2023. Thank you for joining us this Valentine's Day evening. And before we begin, I would like to excuse Trustee Walt. She is not joining us because of a family illness. And so if she's watching, we want her to know that our thoughts and prayers are with her and her family at this time. And also, before we move on to agenda item 1, which is adoption of the agenda, I'd like to point out that we need to have a correction of a typographical error in the consent agenda item. So agenda item 12C, the date for the January, it says January 28th, and that meeting was actually January 24th. So that is just a typo that we are correcting for the agenda. So I'll move to agenda item 1, adoption of the agenda.
I move that we accept the agenda with the corrections noted.
Sorry, I'm not used to having my mic on as much. Motion by Trustee Walker, second by Trustee Casiopo. Do we have any further discussion on this motion? Do we have any public comment? And is there any online? Okay. Go ahead and call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. And we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is the flag salute. Trustee Richard Varner.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move on to agenda item 3, superintendent's report. This agenda item is for information only. Superintendent Fueling.
Thank you, President Crossman. This evening, we have the 2023 Carson High School Winterfest royalty with us. Leading the charge here for us is Ananda Campbell from Carson High School. Ananda, if you want to come up and introduce.
Ananda Campbell. I represent Carson High School Judicial Board, and I'm speaking on behalf of Ann Britt tonight, who is unable to make it. And I'm here to introduce some of our CHS Winterfest royalty. We have seniors and our sophomores represented here. So our 12th grade, our senior royalty is Anella Mitchell and Parker Story. And our 10th grade royalty is Jocelyn Hagen. I'm so sorry, Jocelyn. And Sergio Villanueva, who is home ill. So 2D Sergio's here with us. And they are going to be sharing some of the highlights of Winterfest with you.
I'm Parker Story, and I would say my favorite part about the whole Winterfest week was all the dress-up days throughout the week that we were able to participate in, and they were just a lot of fun.
Hi, I'm Anella Mitchell, and my favorite thing would probably just be getting nominated. My dad won Winterfest King at Carson High when he went, so it was like a cool little thing.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn Hagen, and my favorite part was really the dance and just being able to see everybody there. And it was just, the dance was a lot of fun, in my opinion. And then here's Sergio, if you want to say anything.
Hi, Sergio Villanueva, and my favorite part of Winterfest was probably all the after-school activities, being able to see all my friends and everybody that went to those to support Winterfest.
Thank you, guys. Do the board have any comments or questions?
I would just like to congratulate you guys. Way to go. And hopefully you did have fun. It sounds like you did have fun. And it's nice to be in the presence of royalty. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. Congratulations. I think all these activities we have, this being one example, is just an opportunity to highlight some of our students. Honestly, we have so many great students. And that's the whole idea is, you're here to learn, but you're also here to have fun. So I hope this was a lot of fun and you look back on this fondly. So congratulations.
Congratulations. And I also have a question for our seniors. What are your plans after graduation? I feel like I'm filling in for Trustee Swerzik. Yeah.
So I'm going to cosmetology school here in town. My mom owns Bespoke Studio, so I plan on working there for an apprenticeship, and then after that, moving to Tahoe and starting my own hair salon.
I will be a diesel mechanic. I'll be going to Laramie, Wyoming for Wyotech and getting my diesel mechanic stuff.
Great. Great to hear. Great job. Also, Parker, I went to the basketball games and I know it wasn't that it was a tough season, but you're a scrappy ball player and a good hustler out there. So good job. And thank you very much. Congratulations. And I hope that you enjoy your remaining years at Carson High. It's a lot of fun when you get involved.
Thank you very much.
So does the trustee.
Mrs. Campbell, thank you for subbing in tonight. Appreciate it. And Trustee Clapham, I actually just told Parker the exact same thing. He's a legend in my household right now. So the only other thing I have this evening to put on your calendar, and it's a little bit of a date change from historically when we have held these events. But this coming Tuesday, February 21st, is what we are calling More Than a STEM Night, a community PLC event. Historically, we've had community PLCs on Wednesday evenings. Again, this chance for the community to come together and learn more about what the schools are about. And a part of that is accountability to the district's strategic plan. With that accountability, I think seeing it up close and real at Carson High School and some of the amazing things that we offer in our high school is really a testament to the work a lot of our people are doing out there. There's some amazing things. So parents, well, effectively the entire community has been invited, but especially kindergarten through 8th grade. Being invited to come and see what is happening there with all the CTE programming. They'll have some sessions on AP and Jumpstart, so parents can learn a little bit more about that for those that are going to be going up into Carson High next year. So very excited to have this, and food will be provided. It's Taco Tuesday. So hopefully with that extra little incentive, families will be ready to show up and learn a little bit more about the amazing things that we offer. So that is all I have.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 4, board reports and board member comments for information only. Do we have a representative from Carson High School here tonight? Thank you for filling in. I heard why Ava Schofield was unable to be here, so she has a family matter. And then just please state your name for the record.
I'm Alex Munoz.
I'm Paulina Perez. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Like you said, Ava couldn't make it today. So we're hoping to run for school board reps next year, both of us together. And on that note, the SBO elections end on Thursday, so the student elections start on Thursday for next week.
Our spring sports are starting. Can you guys hear me? Oh, okay. Our our spring sports are starting soon, and track, softball, and baseball, and boys golf. And our winter sports just finished, but we're having some wrestling state championships.
Our next big event would be the academic letter for seniors, which will be coming up in March. And that's basically it, unless you guys have any questions for us.
Are there any questions from the board? Thank you very much for your report and good luck in elections next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a report from Pioneer High School? You get the festive outfit award.
So good evening and happy Valentine's Day. I am Faith Key. I told you guys that last time though. And these are the announcements for Pioneer Academy. Number 1, Pioneer students attended a once-in-a-lifetime field trip to Tesla on February 9th. Number 2, the Pioneer Speech and Debate Club participated in the Spanish Springs Debate Tournament last weekend and gained new personal successes in their participation. 3, 26 students will be inducted into the Pioneer Academy National Honor Society on February 22nd at 6 p.m. Number 4, the Positive Vibes program continues to gain in numbers. Each week, staff notes students who have gone above and beyond and increased positive vibes at Pioneer Academy or in the community for the week. To date, we have celebrated 151 positive actions. Number 5, the American Sign Language Club at Pioneer Academy taught the elementary schools basic sign language this past week. That concludes the student announcements for Pioneer Academy, unless you guys have any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any board questions? Go ahead, Trustee Walker.
I'm just wondering if you and Mr. Davis coordinated, because it is perfectly matched.
No, we didn't, but you know what? It works out very well. I'm very happy about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank
Do
you.
we have any other board questions? No. Thank you very
Okay,
much for
very
your
nice.
report.
Thank you.
And we'll go on to the Nevada Association of School Boards update. Trustee Varner is our new director.
Yeah, thank you. I attended my first meeting, I think a week or so ago. It was a Zoom meeting. I volunteered for several committees, so I don't have a lot of information from them, but I think everybody knows by now that on March 10th is NASB's Day at the Legislature. It begins at 7 a.m. and goes till 12:30 p.m. Everyone will have the opportunity to meet and greet the legislators and other community members. And at 11 a.m. in the Senate and at 11:30 in the Assembly, NASB officers will be seated on the floor with the legislators. Other board members who attend are encouraged to watch from the balcony. And I think everybody's got a flyer on this already, but the NASB Orientation Part 3 will be held on March 11th at the Staybridge Suites in Carson City. The training is from 8:30 to 2:30 p.m. Like I said, I think everybody's got a flyer, so I'm not going to go over what training is being offered. The workshop partially fulfills training required by NRS 386.327, which is a required professional development for trustees. And that's my report from NASB.
Thank you, Trustee Varner. And then let's go ahead and do you have a board report? We'll do board reports from schools.
I have a report from Fritch Elementary. First of all, I'd like to thank Principal Brown for allowing me to come into the school and give me the tour. And he took the time to sit with me for quite a while and explain everything that's going on at the school. And it sounds like they have a lot of good things that they're doing at Fritch, so I really appreciated the time he took to do that. He'd also like everyone to know that their week of kindness is taking place this week. Wednesday, the theme is powered by kindness, and they're asking students to dress in superhero attire. Thursday is Share a Kind Note, and they would like students to wear tie-dye. Friday, they will wrap up the week with the theme Bulldogs for Kindness, and the dress day will be Fritz Spirit. And that's my report for tonight.
Thank you, Trustee Walker.
So great things are happening at Eagle Valley Middle School. So they just have a few things to update everyone about. So the girls volleyball team members are gearing up for the Taniva tournament that's going to be held February 16th at the Mack Center. So good luck to the Eagles. They are continuing to implement and fine-tune their AVID strategies and recognition for positive behaviors and hard work for the students. And they have a lot of promise with the wrestling team this year. They look large and strong, so we look forward to some great results from the Eagle Valley wrestling team. That concludes my report.
Trustee Clapham.
Excuse me, I don't have one from Carson Middle School this week, but Mark Twain Elementary, they completed their quarterly rewards ceremony honoring students for academic achievement, kindness, respect, and growth. They also honored the teachers and support staff. And then they had their MTSS evaluation from the state with many successes. 100% of their students and staff members could discuss their 4 pillars, being safe, respectful, responsible, and kind. So that's the report from Mark Twain.
Thank you. Trustee Ramirez.
So from Silliger Elementary School, just a friendly reminder that the fundraising packets went home for the, catalog and cookie dough fundraising event. They went home on the 10th, and the, the packets are due on the 24th of February. So just a friendly reminder for everyone to participate on the fundraising event. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Trustee Casiopo.
I had a report, but Faith did a great job and took every single note I had, so
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, great. Oh. Turn it on and off. Just an update. I know you didn't say Carson Middle School, but I've been following their girls volleyball team, and they too will be competing in the Taneva Championship. So get the girls volleyball from both middle schools there. For Fremont Elementary School, let me pull up my notes on that. Oops, wrong one. Sorry. It closed up the message, so let me get it. So they are going to have their reading week begin at the end of February, the last week of February, and they will be reaching out to the board soon to ask for volunteers to read. And as a culminating activity, they'll be hosting bingo for reading event with their families on March 7th. So get ready for reading week. It is coming, and we usually get invited to several different schools to participate in that. And that concludes my report for Fremont Elementary School. So we will go ahead and move on to agenda item 5, association reports for discussion only. Do we have any association reports tonight? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 6, public comment. Do we have any paperwork? Okay. Do we have anyone interested in public comment? And I will read the comment. If not, we will go ahead and close public comment. Seeing no hands, I'll go ahead and, or do you want me to read it? Okay, because you kind of gave me a look, and I just wanted to make sure whether I needed to read it or not. Okay.
The only thing I would add, Ms. President, is that was the period of general public comment. There will still be other periods
Yes.
for action items.
Yes, so the public comment section right now, agenda item 6, is for general public comment. When we take action later, we will always open that up for action items for public comment as well. So I will close public comment at this time and move to agenda item 7, presentation on the Carson City School District partnership with iTeach Nevada, a national licensing provider. And this is for discussion only with Tasha Fuson, Dan Sadler, and Dr. Kimberly Thagard.
Thank you, President Crossman, members of the board. Dan Sadler, Associate Superintendent of Human Resources, for the record. We're excited to be speaking with you tonight. You're all familiar with our strategic plan, and goal 1 being recruiting, providing professional growth opportunities, and retaining exceptional personnel for all positions within the district. And underneath strategy 1.1.1, item D, you'll see opportunities for alternative routes to licensure. And this is something that has been on our strategic plan for a while that we're really excited to be moving forward in a partnership with iTeach Nevada. Dr. Thagard, who is sitting here to my right, is the Western Director for iTeach, and presented to a group of interested educators, potential educators. Yesterday at the district office, we had right around 30 people in attendance, and had 21 people actually complete the application yesterday to get that started. So we're very excited about this partnership, and we're going to turn things over to Dr. Thagard here to just kind of share with you a little bit about iTeach, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Kimberly Thagard, for the record. It's nice to meet all of you. I know I do not have a mullet, but I'm hoping I get just as much respect on that end. Thank you. I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit about the partnership that we have with Carson City. As many of you may know, in starting a educator prep program, in again starting it and then perpetuating that for years to come can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it can be thousands upon thousands of hours, man hours, that, as we all know, in public schools is already exhausted. In larger districts, an EPP from scratch can cost millions of dollars. So we're very proud of this partnership and what we believe it is going to do, not just for the teacher candidates that are in Carson City, but there will be a trickle-down effect, of course, to the parents and as well as to the community, and of course, the most important members of that community, which are our students. I always like to introduce myself a little bit. I feel like this is the hair club for men bit, where I'm not just the president; I'm also someone that uses it. I was a fourth generation teacher that had absolutely no aspirations of becoming a teacher. I worked in Washington, D.C., was on my way to law school and wanted to go back to work for the Senate Majority Leader, who I had worked for previously. While applying for law school, a family friend had asked if I had ever considered teaching. Here I am 20 years later as a former teacher, principal, and now someone who holds a PhD in adolescent literacy. All that to say, someone who starts off with an alternative route to teaching can certainly be beginning a very beautiful career in education. It certainly, as all of you know, is a calling. So one of the reasons that we believe that Carson City reached out to us, and then 3 other districts subsequently, I don't know if you guys realized what a wildfire you started, but when the press release went out, we got calls from several other districts, some actually in Arizona, to be a part of their Grow Your Own programs. Candidates with iTeach are required to have a 2.5 GPA from a college or university to begin our program. The average GPA in the state of Nevada, actually this is inaccurate, is a 3.1 GPA. A lot of the folks that come to us actually already have master's degrees and PhDs. They simply need the license. Dan mentioned this last night in his interview with Channel 2. Going back to a brick and mortar university and paying the enormous fees that are required, not just from your pocketbook, but also your time, is a little outdated. Again, we have very highly qualified candidates that come our way. Another thing that we pride ourselves on is the fact that 59% of our candidates are non-white. The research will show that a Hispanic student is more likely to learn in a classroom with a Hispanic teacher. So we like to pride ourselves on that ethnic diversity. The retention rate of our teachers is 3 years. Maybe not in the same school or even at the same grade level, but on average, 91% of our teachers stay in the profession for at least 3 years. We offer free test prep to all of our candidates. So any substitutes or paras that you currently have in your schools that maybe are a little bit trepidatious about taking their praxis test, we actually will give them free test prep, not just for the first exams they have to take, but for their culminating exams as well. So they will have free test prep through the entire program until they get to their standard license. Those folks that take us up on that test prep have a 96% pass rate on those exams. Another thing that we do, and Carson City is actually going to be the litmus on this, is using actual supervisors from within the district. So these are former district principals, teachers, in some areas, HRs, that have an average experience of 25 years. We really encourage districts to use supervisors that, have been in the district because they know the ins and outs of the district. They know what the names of the elementary schools are. They know what Winterfest is. They know who the school board members are. They know who to contact in HR if someone has a question about A, B, or C. Using supervisors and mentors that have been here is just another layer of support that is given to those first-year teachers. The ethnic diversity right now of Nevada's supervisors is 50% non-white, and we have a 98% retention rate there. I've only had one supervisor leave me, and she had two twin granddaughters who got UCLA soccer scholarships, and she said she was just gonna have to drive to California and couldn't observe. So we let her go. We also like to specialization match. Where we can, we like to ensure that if someone is going to be mentoring or supervising an elementary teacher, that they've likely taught at the elementary level. Or if they've taught high school math, if we can match them with someone that taught high school math, we really like to do that as well. And that's just, that's just common sense, right? They know the resources that are there for them. They know the supports that they may need. And they also may be able to give them strategies that they themselves used in the classroom. As part of every teacher's field experience, which is the first year of their teaching, they will get 5 observations, 3 their first semester and 2 their second semester. Each one of these observations follows a very prescribed and proprietary evaluation known as the iTeach classroom appraisal form, or the CARE form as we call it. The beautiful part about the iTeach CARE form is that not only is the mentor or supervisor giving feedback to this on this form, but because of our partnership with the teaching channel, our supervisors are able to pinpoint areas of this CARE form where that candidate may need growth, and then they are able to supply them with thousands upon thousands of master teacher videos that are part of the teaching channel catalog, where they can assign directly the portion of the CARE form with the specific videos that can help coach them and improve upon that area of teaching for them. The CARE form is not the NEPF, but it works in coordination with the NEPF. Our coursework is CAPE accredited. Those of you that serve on any state boards or national boards are probably very familiar with what a CAPE accreditation is. It's one of the highest forms of educator preparation approval that you can get in the United States. The CAPE program can come into our office at any time and pull the credentials of our professors. It can pull the transcripts of our candidates or our instructors. They pretty much want to make sure that we are offering the highest quality educator prep that there is in the country. In fact, their rating puts us at the same level as any brick and mortar university or college and their educator prep programs. We have standards that are aligned to state standards. We are a one-stop shop. So for every elementary candidate that iTeach brings in for Carson City, that person will get, in addition to the free test prep, every class that they need to fulfill their ARL, as well as all of the methods courses that are needed for them to earn their standard license. So again, they get everything they need. We use a Canvas platform. Anybody that survived COVID in college knows exactly what Canvas is. Our instructors who built this curriculum are cross-contents. They are PhDs, they are former superintendents, they're former school leaders, administrators, and teachers. Those are the folks that built these courses. Our assessments are blended. We use multiple rubrics. Some are short answer, some are long answer. And then with their field experience, each teacher has 2 very in-depth reflections where they will actually go in and look at 2 courses or classes rather that they taught, and they will reflect on who they were as a teacher in that moment, how they feel like they communicated the content to the students. They're really able to sort of pinpoint what it is that they need to do to grow as a teacher. They do one of those after the 3rd observation and then one again after the last observation so that there's a true measure of growth there. Best part about iTeach, well, one of the best parts, might be a little biased, is the payments. So to earn your full standard license for an elementary candidate, this is everything they need. Again, all 5 methods courses and their ARL courses, it's $5,909. One methods course at a local university is around $1,200 if you include all of the fees. We do not have to keep up with football stadiums or landscape, so we are able to offer this price. For an elementary track, this is everything that they are offered. In order to get their intent to hire and earn their ARL, all they have to complete is our first 2 pre-hire courses and then, of course, the state required core, and we also accept the CBEST for that. And then they will earn their ARL credentials, and they will be eligible for hire, and then they will complete their coursework while they are in the classroom. Unlike many universities, we have a flipped model. So you don't do all the coursework on the front end and then do the student teaching at the end. You actually do your pre-hire courses that prepare you for the classroom. And then while you're in the classroom, actually working with students in a school community, you complete the rest of your coursework. This is a secondary track. Secondary, of course, has to take their Praxis 2 on the front end for their content area, unless, of course, they majored in that the way that the NAC is written right now. And then on the other end, they will take their one methodology course for their content area. This is a sample timeline for an iTeach candidate and how long it will take them to get through all of the coursework. This, of course, is for an elementary candidate. And this falls in line with the reimbursement that Dan and Tasha and I have discussed. And it also is what is required for the state of Nevada. Each candidate, as you know, will have to be in a classroom for 2 years anyway before they can file for their standard. So the timeline here actually works out beautifully in line with the DOE's requirements as well. In addition to the teaching channel, iTeach also has a partnership with the American College of Education, which was actually approved out of the state of Indiana. It was recently ranked the #2 college, online college by Newsweek. And every candidate that finishes the iTeach program will be given 12 hours towards one of their 36 master's degrees that they have. They can get a master's degree in elementary education, a master's degree in autism, a master's degree in special ed, and so on. Those 12 hours, of course, will be applied to however many semester hours are required for whatever master's they choose. The American College of Education will reduce the number of hours that they already have, and they will also reduce the amount that the student will pay from this $9,500. And this is another way that Carson City can ensure that they are preparing the most effective teachers and the most effective workforce for their students. So the way that the Grow Your Own works here is it's actually worked out really beautifully so far. We worked together as a team. We built all of the marketing materials for last night's event. We were able to advertise that throughout the state. We had over 57 participants sign up to the event. We, of course, had the lingering emails the next day. I signed up for last night, but my child got sick. So all of those folks will still get the information from last night, and I will walk them through the application process. After last night's event, there were 21 candidates that applied to enter the iTeach program through Carson City. Those are all folks that hopefully will be in your classrooms with their ARL next fall. At any point that you all want to check on any of the candidates, I am readily available to let you know about their progress. They also have access to something called a progress statement, which Dan or Tasha can request at any time to let them know what courses the candidates have finished and how much money the candidate has already paid into the program. At the end of each semester, Tasha and Dan can request for me who has finished which coursework in order to arrange the reimbursement from the district. This is a true grow your own. The district is making a very, very strong decision to invest in these teacher candidates, in their paraprofessionals, in their long-term subs. The district invests in the candidate becomes a teacher, and then hopefully when that teacher retires, they want to serve as a supervisor right back in Carson City School District. So it really is truly, you really are truly growing your own teachers and their supports. Again, I'm Dr. Thagard, and thank you guys for letting me give you some information about the partnership.
Thank you for that presentation. Do we have any questions from the board? Trustee Walker.
I guess it's more probably for Tasha and Dan, but also you. So in addition to this, say like we have a candidate in a classroom that's really underperforming. Through the supervisor and through iTeach Nevada, is there additional supports given to that teacher in the classroom, or is that kind of on the site administrator, or both?
I'm gonna let Tasha answer that because she already has a plan.
Hi, all. Tasha Fusum for the record. So actually, Mary Prey was also involved in when we were actually researching ARL programs, because it will fall underneath her area of responsibility. All of our ARL candidates will also go through our new hire training and will be signed site mentor as well. So they actually end up with two mentors. They get an iTeach supervisor. We've recruited our three most recent retirees for principals that will come back. So Valerie Dockery, Ruth Lee Calario, and Susan Squires have all agreed to come back and be trained as supervisors for us. So they are internal and we'll be able to provide that support. It was really important to us to make sure that we didn't have competing expectations for our candidates, our AL candidates. We wanted things to be able to be, seamless for them and the amount of support to be cohesive. So that's the reason why we went that direction. So our ARL candidates will still go through our 5 days of new hire training and still be expected to meet with their on-site mentors. So we'll have that extra layer of support.
Do we have any other questions? Trustee Ramirez.
Just a comment. I had the opportunity to attend the presentation last night, and I was very impressed with the attendees. I saw a diverse group of people that expressed interest in this program, and I think that that's what we're looking for. So very impressive. Thank you. Thank you for what you guys are doing.
In the past, when someone would go through college courses, they'd have to come back and do student teaching for a period of time, and it was basically volunteer. They weren't getting paid for it. But I'm concerned, is there going to be any student teaching involved in this where they're working under another teacher for a period of time? Because I've been told by other teachers that they actually learned more during their student teaching period than some of the courses they took in college. Classroom management, et cetera.
Right. Thank you, Trustee Varner, for that question. Actually, iTeach is set up so that teachers are actually hired. Our ARL candidates get an actual teaching certification from the Department of Ed, but it's an ARL certification. They're given 2 years. Actually, it's 3, but within our program, we're giving them 2 to convert that to a standard license. But what that ARL certification does, or the ARL license, is it allows them to be in the classroom teaching. So because we know these are folks who are coming to us not from your traditional track in which students or a candidate will do a student teaching, these folks are actually entering into the classroom and they are taking over a classroom and teaching from day one. Because of that, we're providing an extra layer of support. That's why they literally have the 2 different mentors. They have the ARL mentor, supervisor, they have the site supervisor, and Superintendent Fueling and I have been talking about potentially trying to line up some of our recently retired teachers to maybe do a 2 or 3 week co-teaching type of a situation for the first couple weeks to be able to help get them established with classroom management and routines. So we are looking at ways to be able to really provide extensive support for them. But and Dr. Thagard mentioned it, but the first 2 classes that our ARL candidates would take really are on, and they have to finish those before entering in the classroom, are on what it means to set up a classroom, how to write lesson plans, behavior management, those, the introductory concepts of what it means to do that. And they get to see teachers in action. And as Dr. Thagard said, there's a lot of videos. My daughter happens to be an iTeach ARL teacher in Texas. So I have a lot of information from her about what she's been going through to get her credentials there. But in any case, there is a good amount of information that they have from a theoretical perspective heading into the classroom. So we were looking to pick up and provide extra support to them in terms of actually practicing that the first couple weeks.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Also, I just want to be clear, is you mentioned something about reimbursement, the cost $5,900. Are we paying that, the district, or is the student paying it?
Do you want me to take it or do you want to take it? So the way that it would work is the candidate would pay us directly first, and they must be completely successful for the program to be eligible for reimbursement through the district. At any point, the district can ask on a semester basis how many courses the candidate has completed, if they've passed those courses, and at that point, they would be eligible for reimbursement. All of our candidates have to have at least an 85 or higher in every single course in order for it to count as a pass. And for our first course, which we were mentioning earlier, is very heavy in pedagogy, it's very heavy in law. In that course, they have to get 100% in that course before they're able to move on. So in terms of reimbursement, they will have a form, almost like a progress report, for lack of a better phrase, that will allow for the district to see that they've managed success at different stopping points for them to earn that reimbursement.
Maybe for Mrs. Sadler or Tasha?
Yeah, and speaking of the reimbursement, the way we're setting this up is so that when they are enrolled in the program, they're working through those courses by semester, that they would be reimbursed for those costs by semester as they're completing it up to 2 years, so that they have a 2-year time frame in order to complete that. And one way to think of that too, because they're under an ARL license, working towards a traditional license out of that ARL license, it's incentive for them to get into the teaching field and almost kind of covering their fees. Well, it is covering their fees for the programming, but almost as a paid internship, because they're in the classroom getting those supports and getting their training as they're completing that over the 2 years.
I have another one. If we get somebody on board and we've reimbursed them for their expenses, what prevents them from going to work for another district? Is there any type of thing they commit to a 2 or 3 year period to stay with the district, or?
No, we don't have it set up that way right now. Other than when they're taking their classes, if they want to be reimbursed, they need to remain successfully employed with the school district. So the ARL license itself is through the state of Nevada, so they can take that with them anywhere. But if they're going to be reimbursed for the courses that they're taking, they would have to remain employed with Carson City School District.
Yeah, I guess one concern is if the retention rate is only 3 years, is what you said, right? Of your students?
That's a percentage of them. It was an average of how long they stay in the field.
Oh, let's go. Sorry.
So I'm assuming that this is funded out of grant funds? I guess that is a question.
So we do have grant funding sources. This is heading into next year though, but so it is already allocated funds. It's going to come out of Ed Services funding. Okay. So we do have a means to pay for it, even if the grant funds don't exist beyond the ESSER funds. I think the way I would think about it, Mr. Varner, is the reason why we are doing this as a reimbursement is they are getting paid after. So after the first semester, they complete the first semester of teaching for us. They stay up on their coursework and they're satisfactorily progressing through iTeach. Then they get reimbursed for that semester. So it's always after they've worked for us. So in essence, we're minimally going to have these teachers with us for 2 years. And of course, we're hoping to be able to build their skills and their desire to want to stay with our district after that point in time. But as we've stated, it's actually a national program. So when teachers get their certification and their licensure, or even if they were in the midst of it, so if a teacher came and worked with us for 1 year and then got relocated to Texas, for instance, their coursework could go with them and they could go and teach in Texas. But we're kind of in that same position with any teachers that we currently have. So the cost would be separated over 4 separate payments. It's not paid out for upfront. So for an elementary certified teacher, it was a little under $6,000. So for 4 payments, that would be $1,500 a payment each semester. So that's what we're looking at. So if a teacher left us after 1 year within the program, then we would only be out half the cost of that program.
Also 1 year of service. That's 1 year of a teacher that might have been vacant. And I think one of the things that I think is really nice about this as an administrator, it's always scary to take on an ARL candidate.
Yeah.
This way, we're actually able to monitor their training and their progress in that support, which I think is the most important thing, because a lot of people think teaching is easy until they get in front of a group of kids. And it's not quite as easy as it looks on TV or, you know. So I think that just the fact that that support is embedded, it's money well spent. I just, like, my worry was that it was sustainable, and it sounds like we have a system that it is sustainable.
As a former administrator that hired ARL candidates, I can tell you I hired a young woman who finished Baylor University and she majored in education. She lasted 6 weeks. And I had an ARL candidate who was nominated last year for Teacher of the Year. So you're right. I mean, again, as a former administrator who looked at a very empty master schedule 6 weeks before school started, and it wasn't enough for me just to put a warm body in front of my students because I knew they deserved better than that. Having somebody that's already been in your district that you're investing in, I'm not trying to be naive or a Pollyanna about it, but I think they're going to stay. I think knowing a district that invested in them, they're going to stay.
Do we have any other questions or comments?
I support the program. I think it's a creative way to try to recruit teachers and get teachers in the classroom. But I think, my concern is, are they going to be a good teacher when they start? Or is a student going to get hurt by not having an experienced teacher in the classroom? And I know we hire new teachers all the time, but I am concerned about not having the student teaching portion of it and having somebody monitor them. Getting thrown in front of a bunch of kids, it's not easy, And I just want to make sure our kids are getting the best education they can.
So are we.
Trustee. Thank you, President Carson. I just really wanted to express my thanks, Dr. Thager. Thank you so much for coming out. Mrs. Fuson and Mr. Sadler behind the scenes trying to put this all together. There was a lot of work, really thoughtful work in trying to do this. And I think the fact that other districts are looking at copying now what we're doing says a lot about that. And as much as this is in the strategic plan, and I am very happy we can move in this direction and say that, yeah, this is something we're doing. One of the things that has came up back during the fall, going out to the sites, and since then, we talk about the concern of workload on our staff, right? And there's different angles on that. And one of the angles of concern, and this came up over and over again too, is, look, I've had my prep bought out now for 2 years, so I don't get my prep period. I'm always covering for other classes because we don't have enough people here. The sub pool, we don't have enough subs, right? So it's always that scramble. And if this is something that hopefully for the long run can help us sustain and build some staff ourselves in-house, and then also take some of that pressure off our staff, give them back some more of their time for the planning, for the grading. I'm really excited. I think that's a step in a good direction, and hopefully a couple of years from now, we'll see some great results from this.
I would just add, I do too. I mean, I know I asked questions because when we went through it, those what came to my mind. And, I've had in the past where I spent a lot of money training officers. We spend thousands and thousands of dollars to train them, and then they leave to go somewhere else. And that's my concern, I guess, is if we're paying somebody to come here, they may want to go to Warsaw, they may want to go to Douglas, and it's happened to me, and so I just wanted to throw that out.
The average cost to replace a teacher in the United States right now is $28,000. So I totally understand that. Again, yes, you guys do bring in brand new teachers all the time just to kind of hopefully give you a little bit more security in this. A lot of the folks that came last night, they're folks that have already been serving in your schools as long-term subs in excess of 5 to 6 years. And they just didn't know how they could take that next step into their ARL. So a lot of these folks that you're getting into this pipeline, they've already been serving Carson City kids, which is great.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
So how many kids or people are in the program?
Like for the state or
No,
just
for-
currently right now?
For here locally.
So this was our first recruiting event, and we had 57 candidates sign up. I believe we had roughly 40 last night, I would say. I was just kind of gauging the room. And from that, 21 candidates applied with us and requested their college or university transcripts. And the great thing about us is that we have ongoing admissions and enrollment. So if Tasha and Dan find 15 more people from now until April 15th, they can put them into the pipeline as well, and they can join the other 21. We do like to give them a little bit of time to get everything into us, and we do want to allow them enough time to utilize our test prep to get ready to take their praxis exams, and some of them may have to retake portions. So we really like a long landing strip there. Starting in when you guys did, starting in February is super smart. Because folks can go ahead and get applied, enrolled, and then if they do have to take a praxis test over again, they're still already in the pipe in mid-May, and they're eligible for hire for you guys next fall. So right now, I would say 21, but that could be 20 more people in a couple of weeks.
I'd like to add to that. We do have teachers that have gone through ARL in our district currently. The difference between that is there are other ARL providers within the state, but they're not partners with us. And the partnership means that, one, as Dr. Thaggers talked about, we can actually progress monitor them through the program. It has happened several times that folks have entered ARL programs, they have applied for their ARL license, and then they time out in 3 years, and they've never done any of the work. That license expires, and all of a sudden they're done, and we didn't know at all that they had only signed up and started and maybe quit the program, if you will, or didn't do anything about the program, a month in. And we're trucking along thinking that everything's golden and working well. So the beauty about having the partnership and working closely is that, again, we get to, one, supervise them or our supervisors are actually employed through iTeach or will be employed through iTeach, but to have that personal relationship with them so we can monitor those teachers every step of the way to make sure they're progressing. That's part of the reimbursement piece. So we won't be reimbursing teachers who haven't done what they need to do within that semester and are not progressing through that program. So it's important to have that piece. The other part is to be able to, again, be able to have our supervisors or people who were previously with our district, as we talked about, being able to provide that support. Because in most cases with an ARL situation, we don't know who those supervisors are. We have no idea what role they played or what district they worked for or what capacity and what they're telling that candidate, because they're coming in and supervising, giving feedback, but we have no clue what that looks like. So again, in this particular partnership, Dr. Thaggart is doing our training for the supervisors are doing the training. So I will be attending that as well. We know who those folks are. They can work with their feedback to our teachers that are very specifically aligned to the NEPF. We can monitor every step of the way whether or not those teachers are doing what they need to be doing, and then we can make those appropriate decisions in terms of their employment as well moving forward. So it's important to have that piece. That's always been the missing piece in my mind about whether or not our ARL folks were successful or had the support that we know we probably should have been providing them, but wasn't there along the way because we didn't have that kind of intimate relationship and partnership. So that's what excites me about working so closely and having our Grow Your Own and preferred ARL program.
And if I can just add a couple things to that, and I agree with what Tasha just shared. I think anytime we bring someone into the education profession, whether they've been a traditional four-year university, some that even come in with their master's degree, day one in the classroom is a different story. And anybody who's been a teacher understands that. And so what supports are provided to those educators become critical components of their future success and ongoing success. And I think our district does a phenomenal job of providing supports, providing tools for educators. This is another layer of that. And certainly when you look at, oh, wow, 21 people who are already signed up, that's fantastic. And maybe we get another 20 or another 60 or who knows. It's still a competitive process through teacher interviews to get hired, first and foremost. It's not to say we're putting all 21 of those people in classroom positions. they still have to go through the interview process, be offered employment. And we started the hiring process quite a bit earlier this year. We started posting open positions in January from positions that we were not able to fill this year. And if you look at our jobs board currently, you'll see vacancies that are popping up almost daily currently, and we're also taking positions down because we're filling them. So this is adding to our pool of applicants in a way that we're able to again, as Tasha was just highlighting and Dr. Thaggett has already shared, provide some additional tools and be able to support them for hopefully long careers in our district and have a better impact on our student learning ultimately. So.
I just want to thank you guys for thinking outside the box, helping recruit teachers. We know it's difficult to recruit teachers, and I think the three of you administrators here have done a wonderful job. Thank you. We got to do something. We need teachers, and we know that. So I think this is one way of trying to recruit some people.
And I do have a question. Do we have a cap as to how many students you are able to take? I know this is a pilot group, but do we have an approximate number?
We don't. I mean, if you look at vacancies, that's kind of our number that we look to balance. And I think, I didn't check today before I left, but let's say there's 15 certified positions and maybe 12 special education certified positions. Those are not all going to get filled with ARL candidates. But again, it's as we develop this is something that's brand new for us, and we're hoping this becomes something that is an option and something that we can attract outside candidates for being known to support our teachers in this way as well. So we had discussed as far as like budgeting, like, well, what if we had 20 people? What would that look cost-wise? And we're able to cover those fees associated with that within what's been budgeted. So, but we will definitely report back on with our progress.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much. I'm really excited about this. I appreciate your efforts to put this together, and I look forward to this partnership. I think one of the things we realize with the teacher shortage that is nationwide is that our universities aren't producing enough teachers for the need. I think that doing the student this is a win-win for the candidates because they're getting their student teaching with support while they're earning a paycheck, because that student teaching portion for a university student can often be a significant financial hardship, and it could be part of the reason why some students are choosing not to go into education. So I hope that this, wish you the greatest success in this, and I think that this is a good investment for our district to make to provide qualified educators to our students. So thank you. Go ahead and move on to agenda item 9, which is discussion on proposed changes to CCSD Regulation 331. Oh, sorry, you know what? I wrote around number 7, and so it looked like I already crossed off number 7, and that's why I went. So we'll go back to agenda item 8, which is discussion on proposed changes to CCSD Policy 331, job-related expenses, which includes renumbering the policy to 1060 in section 1000, all staff. This is a first reading for discussion only. Tasha Fuson.
Thank you. As you all know, Christy Perkins next to me, she is our Director of Grants and Special Programming. I've asked her to come and assist me this evening because she actually did a good portion of the work on the update of the regulation, and several of the things that we're going to talk about really are driven by some grant funding, travel, et cetera, that we've had, so wanting to make some updates. So Christy is joining me. But if we take a look at the policy, there's very minimal changes to this particular policy. Again, at the very beginning, you'll see that we're looking to renumber it and put it into the all staff section. That's because it doesn't just apply to certified staff. This is travel for instance, if we had a coach or an assistant coach who was an external, not employed as a teacher within the district, right, but was a coach, so they're employed in that method. So it needs to be broadened outside of the certified staff to all staff because it applies to all of our employees. So that's that first part. We did change the title to add travel and at the beginning of that, just because it's more focused on travel, and we thought it would be more consistent with the title of the regulation. It's not really a change there. You'll see other changes in terms of updating our format for the Carson City School District Board of Trustees, referred to as board. That's a change that you guys have seen on all of the policy and regs that we've updated just in terms of format. So the other things that you see is we did strike through school and put district, just district. Again, just kind of consistency thing. So when we update regulation, we usually like to bring policy back for review. This one hasn't been updated since 2009, so we figured it was at least an opportunity to bring it to all of you to see if you wanted content changes. So if you would like to see content changes, please let me know. Otherwise, like I said, those are just mostly editing kinds of things, modernizing things.
And I do have a question on the right-hand side, policy number, when we're changing it from policy to 331.
That's the title of that section.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, I think that one looks good, and since it is discussion only, we will now move on to agenda item number 9. Discussion on proposed changes to CCSD Regulation 331, travel and per diem allowances, which includes renumbering the regulation to 1060 in section 1000, all staff, again for discussion only.
Thank you, President Crossman. Tasha Fuson for the record again. I thought the best way to go through this one, because we made some substantial changes in terms of flow, like we reorganized some things just because it didn't make sense, the order that it was in, but you'll notice that you have a mocked up version and then you have a clean version. Again, just because there were so many changes and just resequencing of things. So if we would look at the clean version, I think the best way to go about this is just kind of walk you through the content of the clean version, if that works okay for all of you. I'm seeing heads nodding. So, okay, on page 1 of the clean version, basically it's actually a regulation, even though it says travel policy, but on this regulation, the first paragraph talks about the fact that we feel it's important that we use the most inexpensive or the least expensive means possible when we use district travel. We know that it's taxpayer funds that are paying for that, so we want to be cognizant of that. So we felt it was important to call that out. That second paragraph, I just want to point out the word sponsored. So it says district-sponsored travel should be reserved to meetings, conferences, and competitions required as a result of the traveler's role with the district. I use the word sponsored very specifically here because there are some travel that is done that is approved and supported by the district, but not sponsored. The word sponsored means we're paying for some portion of it. For instance, if you're at the high school has a lot of co-curricular activities that will travel, like football might go for a competition over spring break in California. So that might be district approved, but not sponsored because they're not using district funds to pay for it. They typically will fundraise. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out, right? So that's a very intentional word choice there.
So what's the current policy? Is this going to be something that we get a lot of, I guess, committee chairs or whatever calling us about, or?
That is a great question, Trustee Walker. So our informal rule of thumb is one non-required travel. So that's what that second sentence says in there, is that only one elective conference or competition may be done or maybe approved each year. So that has been an informal rule that we've followed. And the reason for that is, for instance, this typically comes up with athletics. So if you're going to have questions from our directors, I want you to know this did go to our athletic director at the high school, Blair Roman, and he knows that it's something that when I was the principal there that I put into place at Carson High School to say, we support you in every aspect of your co-curricular and extracurricular in-season activities. So sports will travel a lot. Speech and debate will travel. They have their actual tournament time. So that this is not related to that. They're obviously expected to participate in all those. So we're limiting to one elective trip. So again, that same football team, You want to go to California to play, that's awesome. It's elective. You're going to do one and only one because our kids need to be in school and they need to be learning, that kind of thing. So we want kids to have opportunities, but we also want to make sure that we're not using district resources to travel to Hawaii, for instance, in February because we got a cool opportunity to do that. That's awesome. I'm not saying it's not an awesome thing, but we just need to be fiscally responsible and also responsible about the amount of time that students miss school. So it has been our unwritten policy. Coach Roman supported that, and he didn't feel that it would be a concern. So, but it's a good question because yes, now it's in writing. So when we say, yeah, is this an elective one or is this part of your season? Now it's in writing that they're restricted to one elective.
Christy Perkins for the record. And we also, now that it is more official in here that we're saying one, when we're looking at grant funding opportunities, sometimes schools had an excess of grant funding maybe, and they wanted to send several staff members to several conferences, all of which were great and had to be budgeted and pre-approved. However, we don't want people out of schools all the time and having subs and openings and unfilled classrooms. So we thought that was reasonable that, one pre-picked, pre-selected, and approved travel that you plan for and you attend, but not just popping anytime you see a good one, you want to send half your staff out. And we thought that was that it was pre-approved and one a year that is really well thought out and would be beneficial to your school and your staff.
That next paragraph talks about the need to do advanced travel, and for obvious reasons, when we know in advance, we can get better prices for registration, hotel accommodations, plane tickets, etc. We are asking in that fourth paragraph that arrangements be made 3 months in advance or as soon as event details are available. We know sometimes you don't know about something that you have to go to. They might only release or open up ticket purchases 2 months in advance. So we're lenient there, but what we're trying to say to that is as soon as we need to go through the process so that we do have the opportunity to be fiscally responsible and try to get better prices on things. We have a travel per diem form that has to be submitted with that information on it. So we again can check DSA or GSA, and all those different pieces to make sure that we're in alignment with travel allowances. That fifth paragraph talks about the GSA. In the original one that you have that's all mocked up, we actually had it spelled out what those costs were, and it changes. So we literally just took it out and put the link in and said, you need to check and figure out what the current costs are, expenditures are there. That's the reason for that. And then that last paragraph talks about the fact that employees do get reimbursed for actual expenses for lodging, parking, or vehicle storage for private automobiles and commercial transportation. For instance, like, if you're sent to a conference and you have to pay for a lift, we're not expecting the employee to pay the cost of that, but they have to keep the receipts. So that's just kind of updating that piece.
And for some of the terminology, we did add Lyft, Uber in the old document. It didn't really have those as options, the shared rides. And we're finding at conferences, it is more cost effective for a whole group to share. One Lyft is much more effective. So we thought that was an important addition.
Okay, if you go to page 2, it talks about overnight lodging. It seems maybe kind of strange that we have to address this, but how many conferences, we live in conference land, as you know that. And there's so many conferences, especially up in Tahoe. And when a conference is up and it only takes a half hour to drive there, that's the reason why this piece is. So overnight lodging within 50 miles of assigned duty stations, per diem for overnight lodging at locations less than that will not be reimbursed. So we do expect our employees to drive up and down from Tahoe. I mean, it takes half an hour. It would take us less time to drive to parts of Reno. So, although it's appealing and sometimes it sounds like it'd be fun to stay up in Tahoe, unfortunately, that's a downfall of living so close. And then there are a couple reasons why we would do that. So for instance, if it was the inclement weather did not allow for travel, and obviously we've all been experiencing that, the last couple months so you can understand that, or B, if the individual involved is hosting the conference and you might be up there until 10 o'clock at night and then having to turn around and be there at 7. So we're trying to do that within reason, but we're just basically saying we're not going to pay for folks to stay at a hotel if it's just, again, a regular conference. And then the next section talks about travel status per diem beyond 50 miles of assigned duty stations. And again, that's a little bit redundant, but talks about, we do reimbursements by the GSA rates. If you have to pay more for hotel or lodging, which unfortunately we often do, because you have to take considerations and if you're traveling and the hotel rooms that are within a 20-mile radius of the conference all cost more than the GSA, you have to say to yourself, well, is it going to be more cost effective to pay above the GSA so that they can stay closer, or now do we have to rent a car and pay gas and all those other things? So all of those things are taken into consideration when we make the arrangements. But if that happens, then it has to get pre-approved. It has to be approved by the direct supervisor and the superintendent, and it has to be noted on the travel and per diem form. If employees go with a higher GSA rate without prior approval, then they don't get reimbursed. So we wanted to make sure that's called out numerous times in here. That prior approval is very, very important. It seems kind of strange, but sometimes necessary. When an employee is traveling for longer than 1 week, they may be reimbursed for the cost of having clothes laundered. Luckily, that doesn't happen too often. At least it hasn't happened since I've been here, but there's been times where, when you go on recruiting trips, you might be gone for a week or so. So that's in there. And again, that third one just talks about the fact that you will only be reimbursed for the amounts pre-approved. This has come up in recent years where folks have wanted to make travel arrangements and pay for the early bird check-ins, or having a private room. So our policy is that people pair up. So we do double folks in rooms, but a teacher might say, oh, I want to have my own room. Okay, that's great, but we're only going to pay for half of your room. You now have to pay for the other half. So we work with them, but that's what we're saying, is that that's not going to be reimbursed. And that anything that's done outside of the approved travel per diem form will have to be coordinated and booked by the traveler. Our poor grants department ended up looking more like a travel agency this past summer. That was my fault because we sent a lot of people to Avid, so I'll take responsibility for that. But when people start saying, well, my aunt lives just like 50 miles from this place, and I'm going to spend an extra 2 days, but I'm going to go hang out with my aunt, and then can you make me flights 2 days later? And this became a reality, and we get that, especially when things are happening in the summer. So the intent there is we fill out your per diem form or your traveling form. We state what the GSA rates are, what the most economical flight we can find is, and then you pay for everything on your own, and we're going to reimburse you for those. So if it deviates from that planner, it's your responsibility, and then you get reimbursed on these rates. So I understand that, it makes sense, but then that's what we do in that particular case. Okay.
That third one there, just talking about travelers adding on anything on the plane, Wi-Fi, upgrades, an extra bag. If it's, again, not on the pre-approved travel planner, that would be at their expense. And we've had some people then come home and submit the receipts. Well, I had 2 bags, I had to pay $50. Well, that wasn't pre-approved, so we didn't obligate the district to those fundings. That was on you.
That next part talks about we do reimburse mileage. So if you have to use your personal vehicle to drive to a meeting that you have in Reno and you're a district employee, we of course encourage you to use district transportation, but sometimes we don't have enough vans. So if you drive your own car, then you can get reimbursed. We have teachers who will work at multiple sites, so they do turn in mileage reimbursement forms. So that's what that piece talks about. But I think the important part on page 3 is the use of personal vehicle for employees' own convenience. That's an important one to look at, because an employee who uses their personal vehicle for their own convenience will be reimbursed at a rate of 1/2 the standard mileage rate and no more than the equivalent cost for airfare. So imagine this. We have a conference we're going to in Colorado. I decide I want to drive myself. Now you're going to pay me per mile, and my reimbursement would be 3 times the cost of my plane ticket. So no, we're not doing that. It's, okay, if you want to take your own card, that's wonderful. So you get the 1/2 the mileage rate, and it will cap out at what it would have cost us to pay for an airplane ticket, right? So it seems reasonable. When an employee is instructed or pre-approved by a principal, associate superintendent, department director, superintendent, et cetera, to use a personal vehicle for travel on district business, the standard mileage rate can be applied. It would especially apply when the standard mileage rate for personal vehicle transportation would be less than airfare. So for instance, sometimes we'll go across over the hill to Sacramento, and we will normally use a van and put 4 or 5 of our employees in the van. That's the most economical way to travel. But sometimes if we don't have a van, then an employee might use their own vehicle, and that makes sense because we're constantly trying to figure out ways to save money. So that's what that's talking about. That middle part is talking about travel advances. Sometimes we recognize that employees cannot put the bill up front, or cannot, if they're going to do their own travel, don't have the funds to actually pay for everything themselves, so they can request a travel advance. That's done on a travel and per diem form, but I will tell you the vast majority of times we're paying for the hotel and the airfare, et cetera, up front. We're using our district resources to do that, so we don't usually put that employees, but sometimes it comes up. So if that were to happen, a travel advance can be given. At the bottom of page 3, payments by another agency on behalf of the traveler. So this is talking about, so normally you get a per diem for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, as you all know. But if you're going to a conference and they're providing breakfast and lunch, then that's subtracted. You don't get to pocket money because if you're already being provided that kind of a resource. So that's what that's talking about. And then on page 4, use of district purchasing card, P card for employee-related travel. I need to strike that and per diem is prohibited piece, so please strike that out. It doesn't make sense on that title. I didn't catch that until I was prepping right now. But in essence, we can use our purchasing card for registration fees, airfare, and hotel with pre-authorized travel and per diem form on file. That's what I was just stating, right? But any use of P card for purchasing meals, goods, or services while in travel is not permitted. So our employees do have to pay for their own food and all those other incidentals and then get reimbursed after the fact. Again, that goes back to if that's going to be a problem, we can do an advance for that, but that has to be all approved. School district owned vehicles, when available, we always suggest that the school district vehicle be used for travel, especially when there's more than one employee going to that place. You guys know that you've traveled with superintendent fueling around the district. So so that's, we do have a means, and we have our employees use that whenever possible. Trip or reservation cancellation, this is an important one. Employees who cancel, postpone, delay, or change reservations may be required to reimburse the district for any or all of the cost incurred due to cancellation or change in travel plans. So this has occurred. It happens every year. I decide I want to go to this conference. Life happens. Life does happen. We cannot get reimbursed for the flight. We do make the employee pay us back for it. However, the employee most of the time gets travel credit. So, but that it's not transferable to the district. So, if you have to make that change and you make that flight, the airline will typically give you credit for the cost of that. So the employee gets to keep that, but they do have to pay us back for that flight. And it has occurred more than once. So that's
and most recently with how travel has changed and how difficult it is to get flights. We today tried to book flights for the summer AVID conference, and several flights are already sold out and full. And we are paying slightly more to get a refundable flight because of situations that can come up. We feel that's been more beneficial to pay a few extra dollars for that refundable flight or the one you can change rather than a total loss to the district. So it's slightly above sometimes, but I think the cost outweighs that.
And then that last piece talks about the total district cost for travel requests. So the travel and per diem form is our official and the only form that is accepted to support travel. The total travel request approved is the limit available for reimbursement, and the employee will not be reimbursed for amounts exceeding that. So, that makes sense. Again, you've all traveled, so you know what that kind of looks like business-wise, but you can't go and rent or have a hotel room and then watch and hotel movies, and the district's going to pay for that. So you can do that, but then the employee has to pay that out of their own pocket. So basically, that's what they're saying, is that form becomes the absolute legal piece, and anything that's approved is approved in that form, and any other expenses that you might have beyond that form become your responsibility. That's what that means in a nutshell.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? That was a very thorough explanation. Go ahead, Trustee Varner.
This may be for Mr. Russell, I'm not sure. If we're allowing people to use their personal vehicles for official business, and if they get in an accident, who's covering those charges? Do the personal insurance cover it? This district's insurance cover it? Because I've run across this in the past, that's why I'm asking.
I can tell you what I believe to be the answer, and then you correct me, please, if I'm wrong.
Let's do that.
So we have a risk manager, and we do have insurance through the district. So when any kind of accident, even if it's a car accident occurs, we put in a claim to our insurance company. If it's our district van, et cetera. If I'm driving my car to a conference and I've chosen to drive my car to Colorado and I get into a car accident, then that's just the employee's responsibility. Does that make sense?
So my understanding, for what it's worth, and there are two different scenarios when personal cars are being used, right? Volunteer transportation for sporting events and that sort of thing. And so if an employee or a parent or somebody else wants to volunteer to transport kids and they go through the volunteer form process, the driver's primary insurance or insurance would be primary, and the district would be named ideally as a secondary insured or additional insured. I think the opposite is true if they're driving on official business in an official car. The school district's insurance is primary. If they're taking their car as a necessity, I think the district's insurance would still be primary. If they're taking their personal car out of personal convenience, I think their insurance would be primary and the district's would be secondary.
That's a much more legal way to put that. I will tell you that any kind of accident that our employees are involved in, if it's on district business, again, are reported to our risk manager, and it's reported through our insurance system. So whether it ends up coming in primary or secondary, for the district's perspective, we do have an insurance carrier that then covers whatever that needs to be, whether it's primary or secondary. So we report all of those things, and our employees are educated and informed that that's what happens. Any kind of accident on district business or on district property has to be reported through our incident reporting app for the district.
And there, I mean, it could get really complicated, like Tasha said through the whole presentation. If they were using a personal car for personal convenience, but were after hours at a convention going out to the movie, it gets really, really case specific. And the insurance companies will always fight and point fingers at each other. So the best thing we can do is make sure that it's covered on both ends.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your thorough presentation, and I think that cleans it up quite a bit. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 10, informational update on the North Lampa Ranch development and the impact to the Carson City School District. For discussion only, Superintendent Fueling.
Okay, thank you, President Crossman and trustees. AJ Fielding for the record. At a meeting, I believe maybe in December, there was a request to get an update on what is happening with the Lampa Ranch development adjacent to Carson High School. And so I'll take you through that. This was an original artist rendition of what Lampa Ranch might look like, but that has since fallen to the wayside. But actually, I don't have this in presentation mode. Sorry. There we go. Okay. And so this is something that has been actually going on for quite some time. We had our first kind of notification and interactions with the developer for Lampa Ranch. I believe maybe even late 2015, and so it took some time to work through that. And ultimately, we don't have an agreement with the developer, but in the development agreement with the city, there are some provisions in there which put some obligations on the developer in relation to the school district. And then also, I'll give you an update of, I'm going to kind of take a step back because we haven't talked about this in a long time, and just kind of what has happened so far, and then kind of where we are now. And we actually just met with the city, I think about 3 weeks ago, and got a little bit of an update on this. And there's still a lot more to learn. I'll just say that. So back on November 16th of 2017, the city supervisors signed off on the development agreement for the North Lampa development. The map here, and I'll have this going on pretty much every slide just so you have the reference of it, but I can't get the cursor over there. So in looking at that, hopefully you can kind of make out in that sort of upper right-hand corner is Carson High School. You can see the football field there. So the development also ultimately, the primary area we were focusing on with this agreement is that section that is east of the high school going towards 580, and then south from the high school and from kind of where the solar panels are, if you can see that, down to 5th Street. There is an additional part to that development south of 5th Street, in that you can see where Fremont Elementary School is there in the lower left-hand corner. So it's a pretty significant, it's really probably the last really significant portion of land in Carson City that could have significant development on it. Again, the developer and the initial builders in the project, Ryder Homes, we had conversations with them well prior to this development agreement being signed. And in the end, through sort of negotiating, but I guess just working with them to come up with a good solution for us. At this time, back in 2016 timeframe where we're talking, the city was growing rapidly and the schools were growing pretty rapidly. And so there was a great deal of concern about our ability to house more kids, especially with the size of this development. In most of the schools at that time, especially at the elementary level, were at capacity. Carson High didn't have as many kids as it has now, but it was still rather large. So there was, and Carson Middle School, actually, Mr. Sadler lived through that. There was some years where they were tipping the north end of 1250 on population. So a lot of concern with the ability of the district to manage that. So in those discussions with the developer, at that time, that northern portion, everything north of 5th Street, they were expecting 1,850 new units. That would be a mix of single-family homes, multifamily, so apartments, and townhouses. There's actually some commercial areas within that too, but I think those are primarily on the east side of 580, not on the west side. So there's a portion, it's kind of hard to see on the map I put in there, but there is a portion on the east side of 580 that extends into that Empire Zone that actually has had some commercial development. I'm not sure if that is still the plan with that area. I think there is some multifamily expected to go in at some point, but I think that was actually the last phase of development. So we likely wouldn't see that for some time still. And up there too, so when looking at 1,850 units, at that time we were using a yield factor of 0.3, or basically for every 100 additional units, we would get 30 students. Now those could be spread across all grade levels, right? We don't know exactly how that would would work out. But that is a lot of kids. And so the concern being, at that time, this whole area was zoned for Bordewick. Bordewick that year, I think, had 650 kids. I think that was, or maybe 660, not including pre-K. So that was a very full building at that time. And so if you remember, prior to COVID, there was a rezoning process we went through, and that was really phase one of that rezoning, and I'll bring that up again. But part of that was moving that area so that it was zoned to Fremont Elementary School. Fremont Elementary School's population was, I think at that time, may have been the lowest in the district. It was one of the lower ones in the district. Times have changed, and Fremont has added quite a few kids, but that was the thought process at the time. Concern about traffic on Robinson Street and Solomon. So Solomon, as you know, runs right in front of Carson High. Robinson is that turn where the teacher's parking lot, the NJROTC building, the transportation barn. As you go east, that's all on Robinson Street. Now that street just terminated as you got past the bus barn, the transportation yard before this. So now that, if you've been back there, you know that street goes on, it exists, fully extending out. And so the concern being part of the transportation department, with their coming in and going out at certain times of day, and if there's gonna be all these homes built out in that area, that's gonna take up a lot of space out on the street. At this time, the buses for Carson High School used to just pick up kids and drop off kids right on Robinson Street. And so that was gonna be problematic if we were gonna have all this additional traffic. Also of concern is that intersection of Salomon and Robinson. And there is I forget exactly, I think it's around 700 or 750 homes, is that triggers having to put a light in at that intersection. So I think at some point that will happen. If you have ever dropped off or picked up kids at Carson High School, that is rough at the beginning and end of the day. The other concern then is thinking about, well, as a temporary solution, there was some space in Fremont, but the reality was, and really at the time thinking about maybe like a K-8 building, having something to soak up some of these new kids that we were expecting to come out of this, and really not having the funds to build a school. And even at that time, schools were a lot cheaper. They were still expensive, but a lot cheaper back in 2016. And so because the population of Carson City is over 55,000, we cannot collect residential construction tax. So that is something where there's automatically a tax every time a new home permit is being pulled. So we are not allowed to do that. What we do have is a 43-cent debt service levy. So on everyone's property tax bills, you'll see that every year when that comes to you, there's 75 cents for operating and then 43 cents for debt service. That was established as the number back when voters approved the 2010 rollover bond. At that time, our rate was actually 47 cents, and through the process of bringing things up to vote, we reduced it to 43 cents. But that rollover bond now continues. Initially, it was through 2020, then it got extended to 2030, and now it goes through 2035. So we will have that levy going forward. The problem is that ultimately that doesn't generate enough funding to build a school either. So, and I'll talk a little bit about how we were planning on adjusting for that. So this is just some language pulled from the actual development agreement. And again, this agreement is between the city and the developer. However, they have to take into consideration schools, and through talking through that process, we were able to get the developer to voluntarily include some benefits to the district to help hopefully manage this growth in terms of our capacity. So first, a 10-acre school site, it was reserved for us. And so if you look back up at that map, just to the east of the solar panels on Carson High School. There's a 10-acre lot there that is dedicated at this point for the school district, if and when we decide that we want to purchase it. That would be made available to us prior to the issuance of the 700th certificate of occupancy, but not later than June 30th, 2019. Now, I'll say COVID and various things put a delay on that. The developer did ultimately notify us that it is available. So as of May, I think it was May 2022, we were notified that it was available for us. And
Didn't they offer to donate that to us if there could be a what would you call it, an egress behind Gold Dust West, something along those lines?
so, yeah, let me, I'll kind of get to that.
Okay.
Well, yeah, there was another opportunity that came up and then it kind of fell through. So, but so anyway, so this has now been offered to us, and I'll kind of get more into that too. So once it is offered to us, we have 3 years to give notice of intent to acquire. So the clock effectively started ticking May 2022. So we would have till May 2025 to give that notice. The purchase price for the school site was not to exceed $2 million. And for 10 acres of land, even at that time, that was a good price based on what values were at that point. Now, that $2 million, though, making the case that ultimately we have limitations on that bonding ability that we have because of the debt service rate being locked in at 43 cents and still having to maintain 10 other buildings. We worked with them they created what was called a donation fee. And so every building permit that was pulled, there would be a $1,000 fee paid that the city then would keep for us over time so that we could ultimately use those funds to make payment towards that $2 million. Now, when you think of it as 1,850 units, that would translate into $1.85 million. So getting really close to that $2 million amount. So then kind of in the middle there, highlighted in yellow, in no event will the out-of-pocket costs of CCSD for the school site ever exceed $150,000. So that's the balance of $2 million minus this $1.85 million. That is what is left. So going further down, that is reserved for 10 years, and at that point, we would have to make the payment of the $150,000. So the concern was that they didn't want this to go on forever. And the projected development time for this area was going out to 20 years. It wasn't going to happen overnight. But so at some point in there at 10 years that we would have to kind of, on our side, meet our obligation to acquire the land. One thing I just wanted to note, if you remember this, and not all of you were here for this, but in the 2019 session, we worked with Assemblyman Al Kramer, and he helped us pass Assembly Bill 244, which again, the concern of not having enough money to build a school. And so what this allowed us to do was to have property tax available, a levy available beyond our current property tax levy for debt service that would not be subject to the tax cap that is for all counties, the $3.66. If a question was approved by our school board and then approved by the Board of Supervisors of the city, then we could take it to the voters for consideration. That was only available in 2020 and 2022. And clearly with COVID and enrollment changes, it was really tough times to, I think, make something like that happen. So that ability has now expired. However, that is something we could, the fact that it already existed on the books, it would be easier to bring it back and say again, okay, now we're in this situation. We had this at one time. Would you please consider it again? But at this point, we haven't done that. So some delays. So this gets back to Trustee Walker's question earlier. So one of the problems that the developer had is that they've never been able to gain access to Highway 50 to put in a spine road, and that has hindered development. At one point, we were working out an agreement with them to create a spine road, and what it would have done is actually shave off part of the JV baseball field to swing a road around and come back out. That there were some issues with the road, and I think the angles that the road would need to take. And ultimately, it kind of fell apart. But the deal was, the thought at the time was, look, if we allow for that would cover the other $150,000 that potentially we would be on the hook for. So again, that fell through, and that because that they don't have that spine road. As of right now, it doesn't look like they will be able to develop a significant portion of that northern part, and it will reduce the number of units being built. I think right now they're estimating it's down to about 1,000 to 1,200 units throughout the development. I'll also note that there was this long pause where we didn't really hear anything or see anything for a long time. There was a lot of dirt moving, I think in part of 2018 or 2019, and then everything stopped. And part of that was issues I think they had with, what I understand, with FEMA and because of it being a flood zone, and then also just COVID, as we all know. So in 2021, we started seeing some construction, and as you look at that map just south of Carson High School into the dirt and sagebrush area, you do see roads showing up on the map. So those roads are now there. There are some homes there. It was building very rapidly, and then things slowed down a lot. And so I think there's 20 to 30 homes there now. I'm not sure exactly, but there's not a whole lot of construction happening at the moment, although it is like the coldest winter we have seen in a long time, which doesn't help the cause by any means. To the east of that area is phase 2 of that development, and I think there's been some buying and selling of the rights to actually build on that area, but nothing has really happened yet. Again, if you look up where just to the right of the solar panels, that again is where that 10-acre parcel is, and that again was offered to us back in the spring. So just kind of making note of that again, given the time frame. So now, kind of a newer impact to us is that since there isn't a spine road that goes through, there is a certain amount of development that can happen up to a certain extent going north. There's fewer units that will be built because of it, but there's a concern then because of having to have two points of exit out of that subdivision having egress. And so, and I have phase 3. I don't know that it's actually called phase 3. I don't think it is, but I'm just calling it phase 3, that northern portion. And so this is kind of hard to read. If I had Mark Johnson here, he could explain this really well. But if you look kind of right smack in the middle, that big rectangle, that's our 10-acre plot. So just to the left of that, which is to the west of that, is where our solar panels would be. And if you've ever been on Carson High's campus back, especially over back by the baseball fields, you have Carson High River that runs through it. And so just north of the solar field, where the solar fields would be, you see there's looking like a dark black line kind of coming out of the west adjacent property. That's really Carson High River coming through and showing how that would flow out. So one thing to note with this, then you see the developments, the single family homes on the eastern portion of that area, and you can see how it extends up north a bit. But that's where now they've had to add that secondary egress road. So where our lot is, the plan now is to have the main road, and I think that's, I want to call it Matterhorn, I think is what the name will be. That main road that runs closer to all the homes, that will be considered the main road in and out of that subdivision. But there is a minor road then swinging around the other side of that 10 acres that truly probably wouldn't get a lot of traffic except for those homes really near the top. Yeah, so there's about 140, I think 145 units here in this part. But now, again, this leaves out a pretty, I think like a third of that entire northern portion that was going to be developed. So now they can't build homes up there because of not having that spine road. So just looking forward for us, again, that 10-acre property is available, and the clock is ticking. It's not ticking really fast, but it's something that we need to take into account, especially considering where we are with the facilities master plan process right now, and putting that on your radar as we talk about capital improvement plan, potentially acquiring that land sooner than later. We have an ongoing student yield study, so things have changed quite a bit in the last 5-6 years. And so last time we worked with this company, Davis Demographics, to create like I think it was a 5 to 7 year projection based on the developments we have in town and based on the trends we're seeing in enrollment. What's really nice is we have some new, at that time in 2017, there really wasn't anything that had been built recently where we could say, oh, there was 100 homes here. How many kids did we get out of that? So like having those places to reference is really helpful with this. And we didn't have that at that time, although 30 was considered a pretty safe number, I will say. I know we are not generating 30 kids for every 100 units at this point. But we have some larger areas now. We've had many new apartment complexes go up. We've had a couple townhome areas. And then way on the south side of town by the old racetrack, you have Schultz Ranch, which is basically done building. I think it ended up just over 500 single-family units down there. So that'll give us some good reference points to figure out what is a good yield to use then as they project out the rest of the building. And they work with the city and their development offices to know what all the expected building projects are, what they're going to look like, and then we can kind of extrapolate out with that yield how many kids we would expect to see. At some point, we'll have to revisit school zoning. So COVID really threw this off, but there were actually 2 phases to the rezoning that we were going to do. There was a phase 1 and phase 2. We did phase 1, and that was really the bigger issue, was phase 1. Phase 2 really cleaned up. As you go down Carson Street, there's a little bit of an area on the east side of Carson Street that is still zoned for Carson Middle School. So it's Seeliger students that go into Carson Middle School. And somewhere as well, I think there's a little bit on the west side of Carson Street that is zoned for Eagle Valley. And so they're really small carve-outs. It's not as big of an issue as it was. At some point, we'll need to fix that. However, that could impact transportation in terms of giving families time to make that adjustment, and we might offer transportation to the school they were already attending, or if they have siblings there. So given our transportation circumstances, that might be a tough thing to pull off right now. Hopefully that will improve soon. And then there's also the further development of Lampa south of 5th Street and east of 580. And again, nothing's really happening yet, but the location of Fremont for that portion that is south of 5th Street, if those were, say more affordable housing, just because there's not a lot in Carson, you might actually attract maybe some more young families there, and then that could have an impact on Fremont. So we'll certainly have to watch that. That's all I have.
Do we have any questions from the board? Trustee Walker.
So I'm looking at that agreement with 1,000 going towards the purchase of that property for the school district, and then our expense being capped at 150,000. So I have 2 questions. One being simplistic, $150,000 for 10 acres seems like a screaming deal. I don't know why we wouldn't just jump on that now. But the other thing is, without that property being fully developed as planned, how is that going to affect it? Because even though they're not going to get the $1,000 for those houses they don't build, we still have a guaranteed cap of $150,000, correct?
The way I read it is a guaranteed cap of $150,000, and yes, that's a screaming deal for 10 acres, right? Then, of course, building a school will cost us 80 million or 100 million or something along those lines. And truly, I don't exactly know the answer to the question. And Mr. Russell, I don't know if you have any expertise in this area, but that there was very much the expectation there would be this number of units being developed. Therefore, you will generate X amount of dollars, and that just doesn't seem to be the case anymore. So, not to put you on the
Oh,
spot.
you're good. I was reading it before, and the short answer is the language they chose to insert in the agreement, which we're not party to, but we are a third-party beneficiary of, says, in no event shall the cost to Carson City School District exceed. And so that's really strong language, and I think it, whether it was intended or not, envisions the fact that maybe not all the lots would be developed, but it does specifically state that our cap is 150.
Can we buy it at that price now, like Mike says?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Well, it was offered to us May of 2022, and we have 3 years to give them notice of intent to purchase, correct?
correct.
Okay.
And is all the infrastructure, I'm thinking, that has to serve, there's a 10-acre blank site that's going to serve a school, that's going to have certain water demands, sewer demands, and all that stuff. Is that infrastructure in place, or are we obligated to participate in any of that cost of infrastructure improvements?
I don't exactly recall. I feel like that was a part of the deal. When we were talking with the city, they're talking about putting in sidewalks, and a lot of the water and sewer and things like that. And that's something they, I think, plan on working on sooner than later. But they were asking us so if we had a school, where would it need to connect? And we don't have any plans, so we really have no idea. So if I recall that we would be on the hook for bring at least those costs of bringing it into the building. But as far as what's being built out there, that's not our expense.
Yeah, so that'll be provided to us, and then we just bring it in. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I just wasn't sure if there was conversation about that.
So Joe, how much of an expense is that, since the system will be there and we just have to bring it in a building?
I mean, there's an expense, but it's not a big expense because it's there. And it would be our obligation, I would think, to bring it into the school. I look at the work we're doing for a school in Reno, and that was different because they had water. My thought was water pressure. They had a lot of water pressure issues there, and didn't have enough pressure to bring it up 2 stories and all that stuff. I would assume maybe won't have those kinds of things, but those are, we'll have to do that. Once it gets to that point, when you start designing a school and you get all the different architects and engineers, they'll have to all be, we'll have to figure that out. And that'll be a cost to the school district. But yeah, that middle school I'm thinking about in Reno is about an $80 million price tag.
If we purchase the property, are we obligated to build a full-blown school on it? Or could you do an performing arts center, or something like that? Or
I think it would not have to be a full-blown school. I mean, and truly, when we were talking about it, I mean, it was the idea of it being, either just an elementary, or I think we had talked about having a 6th grade building, like a sole 6th grade building in the district at that time. We had talked about a K-8 building. We talked about a 9th grader building. So I think the bottom line is, while those are all schools, ultimately, if it's being used for educational purposes by the school district, it's okay.
I'm thinking on those lines, though, we have we have limited places we could build schools. It would be really foolish to get a property like that and not utilize it for a school. I mean, in my opinion.
And at least what I always go back to is, options have great value, and just having the option to do that, even if something dramatically changes and we decisions would look different down the road. At least we have that option available to us. And there's, no pressure to build immediately on there. So it's something that has value just in that fact.
Well, and it sounds like there's interest from the board. Maybe I'm summarizing, but to me, this sounds like something that we would want to as direct you and pursue. And it sounds like what the actual use of that school site would be something to be decided by the master facilities planning, whatever the name of that new committee is. Or it's not a new committee, but I'm mangling the name of it. But
Facilities master plan.
Facilities
Committee.
Master Plan Committee.
There you
So I think that would be something to have, even if it's something that we acquire, you can have a focus committee come up with what is the best need that our district has to use that as a school site. However. Okay. So you guys are nodding. Do you have any other questions? Or
No, I disagree with
it's
what-
discussion only, so we can't really give you a directive right now, right? So
I do have one more question.
Go ahead.
On it. Just if, I'm sure we've talked about it, but I don't know if you know the answer. When we think about the issue of traffic and this egress, so once we put a school in there, you're going to have whatever kind of school it is, we're going to have traffic related to it. And if we had conversations with the city on what that means for us, are we going to be, do we have to
On
invest
the
in a
hook.
spine road?
Right. So the city had a traffic study done back when the original development agreement was put together. So they believe, now that at that time they thought they would have that spine road to go through. You'll note where that 10-acre property is in the southeast corner of that, there's a roundabout put in. Again, there would be that intersection, but we did not have any discussions about an obligation on the district side to support or subsidize any of those costs. Realistically, depending on how all this pans out and what ends up being there, I mean, if you did end up building a performing arts center or something like that, that likely itself wouldn't generate that much more traffic. If you had a K-8 school with a ton of parking, then we might be putting some more pressure on than what the initial traffic study was envisioning, and maybe we do have to help with some of that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure we would, because whenever you build a school or do anything on a school, as you know, that land is public, so everything is subject to a special use permit, which means the public gets to say how much they like it or don't like it, and then the staff writes their conditions of approval accordingly, based on codes and whatnot as well.
Okay, well, thank you for that update. I think it's timely to have that update and start looking at what, and so we can further plan in the future on this. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to agenda item 11, which is discussion and possible action to approve the corrective action plan for the fiscal year 2022 budget violation in the debt service fund. For possible action with Spencer Winward.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. As you recall, middle of December when we presented the budget, we mentioned that time there may be a potential violation, and turns out potential has potential. So we did get a letter from taxation, which was included in your packet, essentially saying, hey, you've overspent a function of the budget, and that's not allowed. Please explain what you're going to do to make sure that doesn't happen again. And to kind of lay the groundwork of what happened here, so we have the pupil-centered funding plan, which a couple years ago took effect, and that made all sorts of funds that used to come to the county and to the school district directly now go to the state PCFP fund. And so that was a new piece of this and definitely a component of this happening. Additionally, we have Carson City Treasurer is very kind and manages our debt service fund for us. And they had some new personnel, some turnover in their office there. So they had some new individuals there. And then you have myself that was new, starting the July, right when this type of stuff generally wraps up. So with all those components, we ended up having $30,000, which happens to be those first $30,000 impact fees from the development that Mr. Fueling was just discussing. That came to the county, and I'm probably summarizing a little bit of, I don't know exactly what happened, but someone probably was like, oh, hey, we've heard that all of these funds that used to come to the school district now go right to the PCFP. And so that's what they did with those. And so they flowed through. They should have come to the school district to be used, to be earmarked for that 10-acre piece of property, or use it as we would be determined for our capital projects. And they ended up being remitted to the state. Because we don't get a lot of communication back and forth with the treasurer's office for, I don't know how many years they've been doing this for us. There just hasn't really been a need besides of end of year summary of here's what we remitted to this, or here's the receipts of this debt service fund, here's what we paid out. We review it, our auditor reviews it, all looks good. So when that came through, all of a sudden we discovered that we were $30,000 overspent in this category. And that's the reasoning why. So that's why this came about. Additionally, we had $1,400 of debt service funds that go to paying agents that are maintenance for debt service that were paid out of that usually are not paid out of that fund. They certainly could be, but we budgeted for them to come out of a different fund. And those two items represent why we were overspent. So essentially to comply with NRS, we just need to tell taxation, hey, what are we going to do so this doesn't happen? The corrective action plan, we purposely have left kind of vague because if we spell things out and then as we're going through this correction, we find something that works out better. If we spelled it out too much, then we're kind of locked into exactly what we have, and that doesn't allow us some flexibility to improve the plan as we go through it. So essentially, the two components of this would be we've already increased communication with Carson City Treasurer so that we get updates throughout the year, as opposed to one at the end of the year after our fiscal year is already closed. And then also the other one has just already happened that all parties involved now know more about the PCFP and potential pitfalls to funds that normally would flow through to that couldn't. So those are really the two components. That's very simple to fix this, to make sure that we don't have a budget violation directly related to this in the future. And I request that you guys approve this plan so we can provide it to taxation and comply with NRS. Any questions regarding the corrective action plan or how that came about, the necessity of that?
No, I get it. I mean, you hate to have something like this happen, but it seems given all the, the different, things going on, I can understand how it would. Do we not have to, compensate anybody for this money?
No. I don't believe there would be any fines or anything for anything like this. The $30,000 that went through the PCFP, we're working with the state to get that back to us. It's been a little bit of a lengthy, cumbersome process because, like I say, it's all new for everyone, including NDE and state individuals there. And initially, when I was in Lyon County, all these funds that went to school districts directly that then went to the PCFP, they were all over the place. Probably nearly every county had something that got sent the wrong place. So this would be the final thing that I'm aware of in Carson City that we just need to get straightened out. The state's aware of it. We're working with them to have those funds returned to us. And there's no penalty for having made this from a fiscal standpoint.
Okay. And then if we submit this and then Department of Taxation either approves it or says, try again?
Yeah.
Well, what's your thought? I mean, we've worked with them before. We think, this is acceptable or?
Yeah, I think they would find it acceptable. They may ask for some more clarification, and we could offer that. And that's about as far as I would see this traveling, is they would just ask, hey, I've got a couple of questions about exactly what, I think I used the increased communication in there. They might ask for some clarification on that and say, okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Okay. Thank you for that explanation. I think this is the good thing. We do audits every year, and this is the type of thing we want to find and correct and do better. So I think that's great. So this is an action item, and I would entertain a motion at this time.
I can make one.
I can make the motion.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, either way. All right, I'll do it. I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees accept the corrective action letter for the fiscal year 2022 budget violation in the debt service fund and instruct the Director of Fiscal Services to file the letter as requested by the Nevada Department of Taxation.
Mr. President, This is a very picky clarification, but I think the action is to approve the letter, not to accept it.
Oh, okay. So I'll change my motion. Instead of accept the corrective action letter, approve the corrective action letter. Is that okay?
I think that. Oh, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. And since he made the correction before the second, we don't have to have the second corrected as well. So we have a motion by trustee Cassiopo, second by trustee Varner. Do we have any further discussion or questions from the board? Do we have any public comment on this matter? Seeing none, I will call for, do I need to ask, are we still doing, no, we're not doing email anymore. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. And we will move on to agenda item 12, approval of consent agenda for possible action. And just as noted previously, on C, it would be January 24th, the minutes for the January 24th, 2023 meeting, and also the minutes themselves are correct with the date. So this is an action item.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Motion by trustee Ramirez, second by trustee Cassiopo. Do we have any further discussion, comment, questions? Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. And any opposed? Motion carries. Move on to agenda item 13, informational items. For discussion only, no action will be taken. One thing I did want to note is that tomorrow, just in case anybody's still up and doesn't remember, is a minimal day for students, and it is professional learning for staff. So if you didn't have that calendared, hopefully you already know about it. Do we have any questions on our informational items? Okay, seeing none, I will move on to agenda item 14, requests for future agenda topics. Do we have any at this time? You guys are looking tired and it's not even very late. We're rolling. Okay, one thing that I went to president's training last week for school boards, and one of the things that if the board is interested in, we could bring it back as a future agenda, is if we want to establish any goals as a board. So if that's something that we don't have, I'm not taking a vote right now, but that was an idea that I thought we could bring back. And then perhaps another idea for a future agenda topic would be school safety and what steps we're making to improve the safety of our students and staff. So, any others?
Just a quick question on the goals, something to be thinking about. Like, can you give an example of something that we would set a goal for as a board?
Okay, so this is just for, it's actually just, I'll give you an example. Would be like, one thing I could think is our superintendent's contract is only for a year. So that would be a goal, would be to update his contract this year. And there could be other goals that we have as a board, whether it's our goal to complete the required trainings, you know, those type of things. What? Purchase a property, or just, you know, those are types of things that we could discuss, and maybe it's best to do that as a workshop, or appoint a subcommittee, but that would have to be something that would be agendized to take any kind of action to form a small committee to come up with some goals. I don't want to get out of that area. So, seeing no other future agenda topics, I'll move on to agenda item 15, adjournment. So we are adjourned. It is 8:38.